The London hospital cyber attack was preventable, after all. Apple's WWDC and any privacy and security updates you need to know about. Clearview has a lawsuit, and now you all might own a stake in the company. AI trained on children without consent, Firefox censors extensions for Russia, and more. Welcome to Surveillance Report 182, where we're dedicated to keeping you private and secure with the latest news in the past week. I'm Henry from Techlore.
I'm Nathan from The New Oil.
We really appreciate some of your feedback last week. I know we asked you recently about some perks that maybe you all be interested in, so feel free to keep sending along suggestions if you have any. We're always trying to make some improvements. But as always, we have Patreon as the probably main way to support this podcast. It's recurring, it gives us a consistent revenue stream, and it keeps us doing this for free, and all of you get access to free news because of it. In exchange, we have VIP episodes without these segments, and also we have Q&As that you can join that you'll see later in the week, and we have some other perks there for you as well. If you don't like Patreon, we're also on LibrePay, and we also support Monero for people who want just a one-time private way to support us, and we still see all your tips. We don't know who you are. Just a general PSA, mainly because of me, my schedule's super tight this week, and so it's actually gonna make more sense for us to split off from here. After the highlight story, we're gonna do our own recordings, so there might be a little less banter between us two because we're actually gonna be doing our own stories. The fun thing is if we didn't tell you that, you'd probably never know, but that's just so you all know. So London hospitals cancel over 800 operations after a ransomware attack. NHS England revealed today that multiple London hospitals impacted by last week's Synovus ransomware attack were forced to cancel hundreds of planned operations and appointments. Ongoing service disruptions at Guy's and St. Thomas's NHS Foundation Trust, King's College Hospital NHS Trust, and primary care providers across southeast London result from Synovus being locked out of its systems by a June 3rd attack linked to the Quilin ransomware operation. I'm not quite sure how to say that, but Quilin. While memos issued by hospital officials revealed this ongoing critical incident has had a major impact on their procedures and operations, like blood transfusions and blood testing, the NHS said 2 days after the incident that emergency services like A&E, urgent care centers, and maternity departments are open as usual, although some operations and procedures relying on pathology services had to be postponed. However, on Friday, NHS London revealed the massive scale of the attack impact on affected hospitals' operations, adding that it would likely take months until Synovus fully restores its systems. The data for the first week after the attack, which was early June, shows that across the two most affected trusts, King's College Hospital NHS Foundation Trust and Guy's and St. Thomas NHS Foundation Trust, more than 800 planned operations and 700 outpatient appointments need to be rearranged. Synovus is focused on the technical recovery of the system with plans in place to begin restoring some functionality in its IT system in the weeks to come. Full restoration will take some time, and the need to rebook tests and appointments will mean some disruption from the cyber incident will continue to be felt over the coming months. This is really turning into a big deal, and so we really wanted to share this story because it illustrates the problems we always talk about and how the consequences and the real-world impacts for this stuff really start to add up. It's also really not uncommon that we see attacks be downplayed originally, and then they turn into much bigger situations. So there's a new update to this that was published today at the time of recording. Pretty much London hospitals knew of cyber vulnerabilities years before the hack. So pretty much they found that these organizations failed to meet the UK Health Services data security standards in recent years and acknowledged as recently as April, which is right before the attack, that cybersecurity remained a high risk, and that's a quote directly, to its operations, according to these publicly available documents that outline board of directors meetings. In January, the board of directors raised questions about the security of digital links between hospital computer systems and those of third-party companies. And then, of course, last week, hackers brought down everything, and pretty much this has been a long time coming. So I think a couple takeaways. One, it's unfortunate that security just wasn't prioritized in their corporate environment. Clearly, some people were talking about it, but some people didn't take it seriously quickly enough. And also, I think this is, we're both people that think that legislation can sometimes be a very good thing and it raises the bar, but it's worth mentioning that just because there are standards in place doesn't mean every company is respecting those standards. And so it doesn't sound like they were even following the UK's Health Services data security standards. So it does seem like my guess is someone might be able to hold them accountable for this attack, but we'll see.
I agree with everything you said. My additional thoughts are, as always, I think it really sucks whenever there's a healthcare data breach because I do believe in being open with your doctor. They are there to help you. It really sucks that they're just not protecting this data. And I also, to my knowledge, and I could be wrong, but to my knowledge, no one has officially died as a result of a cyber attack. Or actually, I think there's a couple of court cases that are currently in court to see if that's true. But I mean, this just illustrates like how serious this stuff can get. When, I don't know, I'm trying to think like a fashion brand or here, let me look at some of this week's data breaches coming up. A cloud provider, Panera Bread. Like, I mean, those are still like people's identities and those suck. I'm not trying to downplay them, but there's a huge difference between your identity got stolen and you effing died because, they couldn't serve you. They couldn't treat you. So, I mean, this is really big stuff. This is always really important. And I think it's especially egregious with healthcare and other like critical infrastructure like that when it's just a compliance checkbox. And like you said, apparently it wasn't even compliance. It was just a checkbox to be like, yeah, whatever, we don't care. And I don't know, maybe things are different overseas, but here in America, like hospitals just make so much disgusting money. They're so obnoxiously expensive. It's just like, oh, you couldn't take one of your Italian vacation homes and like maybe invest in a Bitwarden subscription. All right, with that, we're going to move into our data breach section. We're going to start off with Pure Storage, who has confirmed a data breach after a Snowflake account hack. So Pure Storage is a leading provider of cloud storage systems and services with more than 11,000 customers like Meta, Ford, JP Morgan, NASA, the NTT, AutoNation, Equinix, and Comcast. I say the NTTT, it just says NTTT. Exposed information includes customer names, usernames, and email addresses, but it did not contain credentials for array access or any other data stored on customer systems.
Cylance has confirmed a data breach linked to third-party platform. The data allegedly includes a substantial amount of information, like 34 million customer and employee emails and personally identifiable information belonging to Cylance customers, partners, and employees. Researchers have told Bleeping Computer that the leaked samples appear to be old marketing data.
Panera has warned of an employee data breach after a March ransomware attack. So, for those who don't know, Panera Bread is a chain of restaurants. They own 2,100 cafes under the names Panera Bread or St. Louis Bread Company across 48 states in the US and Ontario, Canada. This one comes from the California Attorney General for a change, and it includes name, social security number, and other information you provided in connection with your employment.
Life360 provides real-time location tracking, crash detection, and emergency roadside assistance services to more than 66 million members worldwide. And they say that hackers tried to extort them after the Tile data breach of all things. And this is part of their tracking service provider Tile with a $205 million deal where they acquired Tile. The exposed data does not include more sensitive information like credit card numbers, passwords or login credentials, location data, or government-issued identification numbers. Because the Tile customer support platform did not contain these information types, they believe this incident was limited to the specific Tile customer support data described above and is not more widespread. So this could have been a lot worse, but still something we want to keep you all in the loop on. Truist Bank confirms breach after stolen data shows up on hacking forum. This is a top 10 commercial bank with the total assets of $535 billion. They offer a lot of services that banks provide that you would expect from your normal bank. So Bleeping Computer could not independently verify the claims, but the data also allegedly contains bank transactions with names, account numbers, balances, and IVR fund transfer source codes.
Keytronic has confirmed data breach after ransomware gang leaked stolen files online. Keytronic is an American tech company that initially started as an OEM manufacturer of keyboards and mice, but is now one of the largest manufacturers of printed circuit board assemblies. The threat actors claim that human resources, finance, engineering, and corporate data were stolen in the attack, and they shared screenshots of employee passports and social security numbers, customer presentations, and corporate documents. The article didn't explicitly say how many people were allegedly affected, but the file size is said to be 530 gigs, if that gives us kind of an indication.
Doctors and pharmacists left in the dark after being named in Medisecure data on the dark web. Doctors and pharmacists named in a sample of stolen Medisecure data up for sale on the dark web say they are yet to be contacted by the company despite their information being available online for over a week. A sample of data from the electronic prescription provider seen by the ABC contained clinician login credentials as well as prescriber numbers and medical practice details. The sample does not include patient names, but has encoded script numbers, pharmacist approval numbers, and medication instructions linked to the prescribing doctor and dispensing pharmacist. Included in the sample of data posted online is a screenshot showing the full names and prescriber numbers of 11 Australian doctors.
Insurance giant Globe Life investigating web portal breach. So this is a Texas-based holding company with over 3,600 employees. They provide life, health, and worksite insurance products and services through wholly owned subsidiaries, including direct-to-consumer and exclusive and independent agencies. That's really basically it, unfortunately. There was no specifics on what data was impacted or how many people. They are still investigating, to be fair, so we might have an update at some point.
And the last data breach, the mystery of an alleged data broker's data breach. So since April, a hacker with a history of selling stolen data has claimed a data breach of billions of records from a US data broker, which would make it one of the largest alleged data breaches of the year. It's imperfect data though, and the stolen data, which was advertised on a cybersecurity forum, allegedly dates back years and includes US citizens' full names, home addresses, and social security numbers, which is widely available for sale by data brokers. But confirming the source has been pretty inconclusive, such as the nature of the data broker industry, which gobbles up pretty much everyone's data with no quality control. No one knows who has it. It's kind of a crazy story.
Okay, that'll take us into the company section, and we have a lot of news from Apple. Apple just had their big developer conference where they unveiled all their new upcoming features and products for the year. But for now, we're going to focus specifically on the privacy and security features because, this is a privacy and security podcast. Thank you to, I didn't write your name down here in the notes, but came from a user on the Techlore forums who kind of collected all these different articles into one spot. So I'm just referencing that because it's really useful. So users can now lock apps, and for additional privacy, they can hide an app, moving it to a locked hidden apps folder. When an app is locked or hidden, content like messages or emails inside the app are hidden from search, notifications, and other places in the system. iOS 18 puts users in control by letting them choose to share only specific contacts with an app. In addition, developers now have a way to seamlessly connect third-party accessories with iPhone without letting an app see all the other devices on a user's network, keeping a user's devices private and making pairing seamless.
Microsoft has delayed recall, and it won't be debuted with new Copilot PCs after all. They're delaying the controversial feature according to an updated blog, and when the feature does return in the coming weeks, it will be a preview available to PCs in the Windows Insider program, the same public testing that you might already see. A report from Windows Central claims that recall was developed in secret and that it wasn't even distributed widely within Microsoft before it was announced, which could explain why the security issues weren't flagged and fixed before the feature showed up in a publicly available version of Windows.
Clearview AI used your face, and now you may get a stake in the company. So for those who don't know and are just joining us, Clearview scraped billions of photos from the web and social media sites like Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram to build a facial recognition app used by thousands of police departments, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI. So after the New York Times revealed the company's existence in 2020, lawsuits were filed across the country, as well as Europe, by the way. The ones here in the US were consolidated in federal court in Chicago as a class action. The litigation has proved costly for Clearview AI, which would most likely go bankrupt before the case made it to trial, according to court documents. The company and those who sued it were, quote, trapped together on a sinking ship, according to lawyers for the plaintiff, and they said the realities led the sides to seek a creative solution by obtaining for the class a percentage of the value Clearview could achieve in the future. So basically, anyone who has a photo of himself or herself posted publicly online, which is almost everybody, could be considered a member of the class. The settlement would collectively give members a 23% stake in Clearview. That would be about $52 million of the company's current value. That would be split among, 300 million people. So if the company goes public or is acquired, those who had submitted a claim form would get a cut of the proceeds. Alternatively, the class could sell its stake, or the class could opt out after 2 years to collect 17% of Clearview's revenue, which it would be required to set aside. The settlement does still need to be approved by the judge, and notice of the settlement would be posted in online ads and on Facebook, Instagram, X/Twitter, Tumblr, Flickr, and other sites from which Clearview scraped photos. While it seems like an unusual legal remedy, there have been comparable situations. According to a law professor they interviewed, in 1998, settlement between tobacco companies and state attorneys required the companies to pay billions of dollars over decades into a fund for healthcare costs.
This one is kind of, people are very mixed on this, and I want to say we covered this back when it was being announced, but Raspberry Pi is now a public company, so it's an IPO on the London Stock Exchange on Tuesday morning at £2.80 per share. I believe those are my correct measurements, valuing it to a pretty high valuation of £542 million, or $690 million at today's exchange rate. People can't buy shares yet. Only institutional shareholders can trade right now, but you should be able to starting on Friday, which I don't know when the article was written, but I assume by the time you're watching this would have already happened. And so Monday, tomorrow, you probably can't start buying this.
Okay, Sonos is drawing more customer anger, this time for its privacy policy. So I don't know what the original anger is, something about the app or something. I don't use Sonos, so I don't pay attention. Apologies to those who do. But according to this article, as highlighted by repair technician and consumer privacy advocate Louis Rossman, Sonos has made a significant change to its privacy policy, at least in the United States, with the removal of one key line. The updated policy no longer contains a sentence that previously said, Sonos does not and will not sell personal information about our customers. That pledge is still present in other countries, but it's nowhere to be found in the updated US policy, which went into effect earlier this month. The Verge has reached out to Sonos for clarification on what this change signifies and whether the company is now handling customer data differently than before.
MasterCard is trying to phase out manual card entries for online payments in Europe by 2030. So in 2030, MasterCard will no longer require Europeans to enter their card numbers when checking out online, no matter what platform or device they're using. In other words, instead of the 16-digit card number we're all accustomed to using for transactions, this will be replaced with a randomly generated token. This will ensure that customers' cards are secure against fraud attempts, and users won't have to keep entering passwords every time to try to make a payment, as MasterCard is introducing passkeys that replace passwords. It will also enable customers to make one-click payments at checkout using biometric authentication with a thumbprint. Cards stored in a merchant's page or electronic wallet via tokenization can be automatically updated wherever they're stored, or they're replaced or renewed.
All right, and our last company story says Data Broker shuts down product related to driver behavior patterns. So this was a big story earlier this year. We talked about how cars, because more and more cars are just computers on wheels, and because cars are basically just computers on wheels, the companies are collecting that data and they are selling it for a variety of reasons. They could use it for insurance rates, they could use it for advertising, all kinds of things. So because of that big story earlier this year, and this went super viral even in the mainstream, it was a big story. And because of that, at least one of the companies who was doing this has shut down that product. It's Verisk, who I do believe that we mentioned. They disclosed last month that they will stop accepting data from car makers and no longer sell the information to insurers, according to the organization Privacy for Cars. Great organization, by the way. I definitely recommend you check them out if you're interested in learning more about this topic. While Verisk has stopped selling car company-provided driver behavior patterns to insurers, LexisNexis Risk Solutions continues to prominently promote its driver behavior data product for insurers despite the mounting backlash from state governments, federal officials, and consumer groups.
All right, and now we're going to go into the research. So GPT-4 autonomously hacks zero-day security flaws with a 53% success rate. So a team of researchers from a couple months ago released a paper saying they were able to use GPT-4 to autonomously hack one-day or n-day vulnerabilities. These are security flaws that are already known, but for which a fix hasn't been released. Skip forward to now, and there's a follow-up paper saying that they've been able to hack zero-day vulnerabilities, which aren't yet known. So with a team of autonomous self-propagating LLM agents using a hierarchical planning with task-specific agents, or I'm sure all you already know stands for HBTSA. Pretty much what this is instead of assigning a single language learning model agent trying to solve many tasks, this uses a planning agent that oversees the entire process and launches multiple sub-agents that are task-specific. When benchmarked against 15 real-world web-focused vulnerabilities, it's shown to be 550% more efficient than a single LLM in exploiting vulnerabilities and was able to hack 8 out of 15 zero-day vulnerabilities. The solo effort was able to hack only 3 of them, so it's a more efficient way of doing what they've already demonstrated. They don't think that it's capable of exploiting 0 days. The purpose is to provide information and assistance within ethical and legal boundaries, so they're really making it clear that they're not here for any kind of nefarious purposes, but it's still cool research nonetheless.
Netgear WNR614 flaws allow device takeover, no fix available. So we're really just sharing this as a PSA for viewers who use that router because the article says that it is a, quote, budget-friendly router that proved popular among home users and small businesses, unquote.
All right, politics section. Apple is set to be the first big tech group to face charges under EU digital law. We've been really keeping you all in the loop on this. Pretty much every week there's probably some kind of update in regards to this, but this is in regards to the DMA, which is the new Digital Markets Act, trying to hold companies accountable and not allow them to be monopolies. The charges would be the first brought against a tech company under the DMA, and landmark legislation designed to force powerful gatekeepers to open up their businesses to competition in the EU.
The UK and Canada privacy watchdogs are investigating the 23andMe data breach. So a joint UK-Canada investigation will look into the scope of information exposed and the potential harm to victims, whether 23andMe had, quote, adequate safeguards to protect user-sensitive data, and whether 23andMe, quote, provided adequate notification to the ICO and OPC. That's really all we have right now. We'll update you guys with more information as we learn more.
All right, Meta pauses plans to train AI using European users' data, bowing to regulatory pressure. So this move follows pushback from the Irish Data Protection Commission and the lead regulator in the EU for Meta, which is acting on behalf of several data protection authorities across the bloc. So Meta last month began notifying users of an upcoming change to its policy, which would give the right to use public content on Facebook and Instagram to train its AI, including content from comments, interactions with companies, status updates, photos and their associated captions, and even some more data. They argued that it needed to do this to reflect the diverse languages, geography, and cultural references of the people in Europe. It always seemed likely that regulators would at least put a stay of execution on Meta's planned changes, particularly given how difficult the company had made it for users to opt out of this feature. The company said that it sent out more than 2 billion notifications of the change, but unlike other messaging that are plastered to the top of the feeds and prompts to go out and vote, these notifications appeared alongside user standard notifications like their friends' birthdays, photo tag alerts, group announcements, and more. So users technically weren't able to opt out of having their data used. Instead, they had to complete an objection form where they put forward their arguments for why they didn't want their data to be processed. So every individual would have to do this, and I'm sure Meta has a large amount of staff processing these. So it was entirely at Meta's discretion as to whether this request was honored, though the company said it would honor each request.
Japan's parliament has approved a law that will force third-party app stores on Apple and Google. In a move very similar to the European Union, Japan's parliament has finished the process to enact a law that prohibits big tech from blocking third-party app stores. The bill passed Japan's House of Representatives in May and now the House of Councilors on Wednesday. Given existing procedure, it does not need to be signed into law by the emperor. Violators will initially be fined up to 20% of the domestic revenue of the specific service that broke the law. The fee can increase to 30% if the behavior continues. The Japanese FTC, which is their Fair Trade Commission, will choose which firms to apply it to. Companies that will be regulated will be required to submit compliance reports annually. While it hasn't been explicitly said that Apple and Google must comply, it seems certain that the announcement that they'll be held to the provisions is imminent. The FTC isn't expected to add any Japanese firms to the list, and the law likely won't take effect until 2025.
Free and open source news, FOSS. So Firefox browser blocks anti-censorship add-ons at Russia's request. Recent regulatory changes in Russia forced, well, okay, I'm actually gonna quote them here. Following recent regulatory changes in Russia, we received persistent requests from Roskomnadzor, I'm really sorry, don't speak Russian, demanding that 5 add-ons, Sensor Tracker, Run It Censorship Bypass, Planet VPN, Fast Proxies, and it didn't say the 5th one, be removed from the Mozilla add-on store. A Mozilla spokesperson told The Intercept in response to a request for comment. After careful consideration, we've temporarily restricted their availability within Russia. Recognizing the implications of these actions, we're closely evaluating our next steps while keeping in mind our local community. Pretty much some people were saying some takes here, so it's kind of an unpleasant surprise because we thought the values of this corporation were very clear in terms of access to information, and its policy was somewhat different, and that was from the chief technical officer of a Russian open internet group. And due to these values, it should not be so simple to comply with state censors and fulfill the requirements of laws that have little to do with common sense. So they confirmed the extensions were only blocked by Firefox in Russia. And actually there's an update here, which is really bizarre. This is from Mozilla. In alignment with our commitment to an open and accessible internet, Mozilla will reinstate previously restricted listings in Russia. Our initial decision to temporarily restrict these listings was made while we considered the regulatory environment in Russia and the potential risk to our community and staff. We remain committed to supporting our users in Russia and worldwide and will continue to advocate for an open and accessible internet for all. Lifting the ban wasn't completely necessary for users to regain access to the add-ons. 2 of them were completely open source, and one of the VPN extensions could be downloaded from the developer's website. And then from a third source, that being said, this does make me wonder what would have happened if the forum thread that started all this died in obscurity and never made its way to the media. Would Mozilla have made the same reversal?
And our last story says Brave says May 2024 was its biggest growth month ever. This is just an update. The browser said that they experienced substantial growth in Latin America, where the browser has become one of the top apps in the Play Store in several countries. Using the historical method, the Brave's monthly active users reached 78.95 million, which is a 7.3% increase from April.
And now we're going to go into the Misfits. So AI trained on photos from kids' entire childhood without their consent. So these are photos of Brazilian kids, sometimes spanning their entire childhood, which has been used without their consent to power AI tools, including popular image generators like Stable Diffusion. The dataset does not contain the actual photos, but it includes image-text pairs derived from 5.85 billion images and captions posted online since 2008. And among those images linked in a dataset, the researcher found 170 photos of children from at least 10 Brazilian states. These were mostly family photos uploaded to personal and parenting blogs most internet surfers wouldn't easily stumble upon, as well as stills from YouTube videos with small view counts, which were uploaded to be shared with friends and family. Now, the German nonprofit that created the dataset has worked with HRW, the Human Rights Watch, to remove the links to the children's images in the dataset. That may not completely resolve the problem, though, because the report warned that the removed links are likely to be significant undercount of the total amount of children's personal data that exists in this dataset. They told Wired that she fears that the dataset may still be referencing personal photos of kids from all over the world, and removing the links also does not remove the images from the public web, where they can still be referenced and used in other AI datasets, particularly those relying on Common Crawl.
Okay, in our last story, cops released a car's travel history to a total stranger. So this came from 404 Media, and as usual, we're just kind of pulling the relevant quotes. So there's a Facebook group called Wayne County Watchdog Ohio, which monitors surveillance powers in the area and who made the public records request that this article is covering. And one of the members told 404 Media, "It's not my plate. I just chose a license plate number from a recent crash report in Orville. I don't know the person, but I know he lives in Orville. They did not ask me for any verification or any other questions, and I'm using a fake name on my email." 404 went on to say, "The unusual case highlights that stalkers or other malicious third parties could piggyback off surveillance systems that are used by the police if not enough protections are in place to stop the distribution of such data. And it comes as automatic license plate readers are an incredibly common sight in towns and cities across the US. Ohio law does not permit the public agency from inquiring about the identity of requester or the purpose for the request unless the requester voluntarily chooses to disclose the information in order to enable the agency to better fulfill the request," the police said.
And that's going to be it for the week. Again, preventable London hospital cyber attack, Apple's WWDC, Clearview lawsuit, AI trained on children without consent, Firefox censors extensions, and much more. Again, if you like this podcast, if you got value from it, especially in light, it's really tough. It's a tough situation. And on the Techlore forum, there's this whole thing of like ads and like the ethics behind ads and if that's stealing from content creators. And I'm sure we personally suggest using ad blockers, if anything, from a privacy and security perspective, not even from an ethical perspective. And so I just think that if you're using an ad blocker, if you're listening to this for free, at least consider maybe sending us a Monero tip. It doesn't have to be very much, but at least trying to compensate us a little bit for doing this and giving it for free. And we're always posting these to PeerTube, and I've seen like the news that YouTube is now trying to do server-side videos or something like that, where they implement the ads into the server end. And so I'm not fully in support of that. And we post all our stuff for free without ads on PeerTube. So if you want to give back to us, like, it's a really good way to support what we're doing and keep this going and make it worth our time to do this every week for all of you. So we really appreciate it. We can't do it without our current supporters. You can join them at patreon.com/surveillancepod. We're also on LibrePay if you don't like Patreon. And again, you can just do a Monero tip too. And we see all those tips. So thank you all for everyone who's supporting us. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you for listening. Again, just last bit of things. Just check out the show notes, check out the stories. You can send us stories at news@surveillanceport.tech. You can also share our podcast around. It's a great way to just get this in front of more people, so you're actually helping the people around you stay safe. And that's all I got. See you all next week.